capitalism is built both on the bull and the bear market.
Yeah.
And I think we think of capitalism built on the bull,
right?
On everything going up, like, oh, isn't that awesome, capitalism? This is the awesome part about now pandemics aren't, but market downturns are also the awesome parts about capitalism too, because other structures tend to try to save the past.
Yeah.
And capitalism has a little Darwinism, is saying, hey, if the past doesn't serve us anymore, now is the time to eliminate it.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to Go Live with me, Joshua Scott, your host, coming at you live from quarantine status here in Columbus, Ohio. Actually, technically New Albany, Ohio on the Northeast. And man, super excited about my guest today. This is Emmett Scott. Emmett, say, what's up?
Hello, what's up?
Man, so glad to have Emmett with us today. Honestly, we just met about 2 weeks ago in New Orleans. You actually, I didn't even, I'm taking my team to dinner and Josie's tagging along and you kind of walk up and she's like, oh, is it okay if Emmett goes? And I'm like, yeah, like any friend of Josie is a friend of ours. So yeah, jump on in. You jumped in the front seat. We started talking. What was funny, man, is we had this big, massive black Ford Expedition and trying to parallel park that in that little spot. You jumped out to try to help me. I think I took 3 attempts at it and I was like, I saw valet about 50 feet up. I was like, that's a much better decision.
Yeah, I thought you were just leaving me like, all right, friendship's over. This was the opportunity to,
I know, man, if it was a smaller car, I would have had that all day long. That expedition's tough. So anyway, we had a great dinner, enjoyed hanging out with you. Just with all that's going on, you seem like a great resource. I appreciate your time, you taking the time to do this today. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on? Let me kind of walk through a lot of your different roles, because you wear a lot of different hats, and the more I got to know you, the more I was kind of like, whoa, you know what you're talking about, you know what you're doing for sure. I mean, you founded and are the CEO of a group called Community Dental Partners, a DSO group, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Co-founded with my best friend from the age of 2, actually, Dr. Chad Evans. So yeah, it's been that part's been a really cool experience. So
were you guys like playing in the sandbox talking about starting a DSO back?
Yeah, that's right. It's every since, yeah. No, the honest truth is I had a radio show and consulting firm out in Vegas called Entrepreneur Advisors, the Entrepreneur Life radio show. And he called me and said, hey, I want to automate my practice and get organized. And he was starting his first one. And that really started, we had no clue what a DSO was or anything like that. In fact, a couple of years in, I still didn't know what a DSO was, but I started hearing about those aspects. And I asked him, I was like, did you drag me into some kind of civil war going on here, et cetera, because there was just so much argument around business models and how dentists were getting support. I didn't, and I still, frankly, don't understand it fully why there's so much intensity there. But yeah, that's what really got started. It was we just wanted to build a really cool practice, and the first one, it was called a Smile Magic, was the name that he had chosen. We built it around a pediatric experience, and as we looked, frankly, there's nothing that's really fun in dentistry, especially, at those basic care models of fillings and crowns and endo, et cetera, and especially for pediatrics. So we said, we really got to do a parallel experience here that's going to give children the relationship that oral health is positive and it's good. So we built it with a movie theater, a play gym. We built it as a storybook around Charlie the Chipmunk. I know you guys are really big on stories. And so that's kind of where we started with this mascot, Charlie Chipmunk, made him a wizard. Each of the different operatories is a different page in the storybook. So all of the wallpaper and and hallways look that way. The kids are called back as prince or princess. They get gold coins along the way. After their treatment, they sit on a little throne. They're crowned for their bravery in dentistry. They get to spend their gold coins. We ask them if they have any money. They get a sticker saying "Amazing Kid" of Smile Magic. Mom gets a sticker because she's always freaking out. They get a balloon, and then out the door. And it was very successful, and we built several of those. So
yeah, no, those, you were telling us, my team, about those at dinner, and they were all just really geeking out over that whole concept. We love it. So how many Smile Magic locations, and then how many overall does Community Dental Partners oversee?
Yeah, so we support about 30 locations right now. About half of those are Smile Magics, and half are Family Smiles or other type brands that are in underserved markets. And that's really been our focus, is where are the locations that most dentists don't want to go, where patient need is high. Yeah. And just really from the beginning, that's been the focus. I think there's about 6,000 pediatric dentists out there. So pediatrics, very underserved, especially Medicaid pediatric. So we've just kind of looked at where those models need support and tried to bring something that has that amazing patient experience. One of our themes is amazing patient experience, amazing staff, amazing doctor experience. So everything we do is kind of around those three concepts. Yeah,
I love that. Pediatrics is probably, this last year, overtook perio as our number one specialty client that we work with. And it's just been, and honestly, our team has probably had the most fun with those, because there's just creativity, in the branding and storytelling. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah, you can be pretty playful. You can be pretty playful with that. And you really need to be, right? We want the impression to be that this is good for your health, and not that it's a negative experience. And, again, we're not giving out iPhones here. We're doing something where, and I have a lot of empathy for our providers and our patients. Our providers, because what other healthcare industry is required to drill on people's bones while they're awake? Right. And then, the customer saying, hey, why isn't this a better experience, right? Yeah. And I have a lot of empathy for our patients, because it is scary. They have a lot of shame around this. We see that. We try to help our staff and doctors be very sensitive to that. It's very hard as a mom if, your child's laying there and the dentist says, so do you brush your teeth? Any of us who have wives, who know new women and moms, right? That guilt kicks right in. And oftentimes you see them jump in and, try to explain. So all of those things we try to be really self-aware about, so that we're moving people in a positive direction, not creating frictions around shame and guilt.
Gosh, I love that. Now, I know, a few other things. I mean, you started National Dental Partners, a DSO for DSOs. You started this podcast, DSO Secrets. I mean, you work with DEO, ADSO. Give me a little bit of just kind of your leadership overview in the DSO space as a whole.
Yeah, so on senior faculty at the Dentist Entrepreneur Organization, DEO, awesome organization, on the executive committee for ADSO. And each of them are kind of supporting the dental space in different ways on different levels. And, I guess personally, my mindset is always, as an entrepreneur, kind of first, if you take care of the customer, everything else works out. Yes. So, if you can just get aggressively focused, and I understand as dentists and as business owners, that actually can be really hard to do. Initially, that's really exciting, but then operational compliance and other things which need to be taken care of can end up being like your primary focus, and then you start forgetting about the customer. Yeah. So a lot of those other products and companies got started because customers were there, they were asking for help. So National Dental Partners were other small groups, maybe 2 or 3 practices up to 15, that were saying, hey, it's very clear on where I need to go next. It's also very expensive. This is a consolidating industry, not a consolidated. So enterprise multi-practice solutions aren't readily available and they're expensive to create. We had already created them, put a lot of money into them. I tell you, they are very expensive.
Yes.
So as different groups came to us and said, is there a way to bolt on and utilize some of your resources, we started to create these other platforms for them to use. I'm not one of the things that you'll notice. I'm not really big on blocking my competitors from information. In fact, I'm probably the first one to say, hey, if you're one of my competitors or if you're just trying to do something awesome in the space, let me tell you everything I know.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to be always raising my game on the customer side. So if sharing information with you somehow makes me irrelevant and I'm not able to bring value anymore to customers, then I think to myself, how good was my value in the beginning anyway? You know, if it's because I have this magical consent form, well, like, why wouldn't I share that? Or even sharing kind of my process and so forth. I'd love for all of us in dentistry as an industry to just like step up our game in taking care of customers. And there's lots of people that are. Dentist Entrepreneur Organization is full of them. We were at the Anissa Holmes event, you know, what she's doing around delivering wow, like these concepts, right? No matter how you apply them, that's really just, you know, kind of where my heart and soul goes. DSO Secrets was created because, you know, we had to create that DSO structure in order to support our dental practices. And I saw how much concern there was around DSOs. And I understand, you know, ultimately why. If anytime there's bad bosses controlling anybody, it's going to get a bad name. And there was DSOs out there that apparently were doing that, which to me, that's not a DSO, right? A DSO is a dental support organization in those order, right? So you look at your clinical team, what do they want? Where do they need support? And you build an organization around that. So that's where DSO Secrets was born, is, hey, if you think DSOs are evil, let me tell you all the secrets that I know, you know, and if you think they're good, let me tell you all the secrets I know. Ultimately, the goal is to bring the industry to say, let's define DSOs as clinical first, support second, organization then to in that stack.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, started DSO Secrets around that, getting people's feedback, started the Facebook group DSO Secrets. And right now during this time, I'd say being a part of any group, DEO, DSO Secrets, as far as the Facebook group, super helpful.
Yeah.
Because there's so much information and you need organizations, you need networks like that in order to filter through this and make really good decisions. So.
Yeah. No, I love it. You've been really active on the DSO Secrets Facebook page the last week and a half, so that's been awesome. If anybody's looking for DSO education, check out the podcast. And I know, I love that about you. I think I could tell that right away. It's like when you get around people and you can almost sense that generosity of resource and education and knowledge. And you know, to be honest, that's been a value of ours too, is not just be protective of a service that we have cornered on the market, but to be educators in the space and to step up, because so much around even just dental marketing can just seem mysterious and complicated. So trying to make that simple.
Well, you know, Josh, like you go to give, right? And if you stay humble, it's not like I know everything. I absolutely don't. And so a single practice owner, a front desk person, whatever, you go to help them and they might say, oh, okay, because the way we do it, and you go, wait, that's actually better, you know? And so oftentimes, yes, we're helping, but we're also, you know, if you stay humble, you're also gathering best practices along the way. And then you refeed those out and someone steps those up another level, right? And
yeah.
So anyway, I love that part about it.
No, and just before I start jumping into some questions here about what we've got going on, I mean, you also, I mean, you're an amazing husband, father. Is it 6 kids or is it?
Hold on, I need to grab my wife. Let me grab my wife real quick. No, I was going to say I'm an amazing husband. I want to make sure she hears that.
Right. Yeah. And is it 6 kids or 7 kids?
Yeah, 6 kids. Dr. Evans has 7 kids.
Gotcha.
We have a CFO with 8, so there's some kind of competition going on here.
Whoa.
But
yeah. Well, that's amazing. And one of those is adopted as well.
That's right. Just recently, he's deaf. I'm fluent in sign language, and so anyway, there were some needs there, and Mom asked us to help out, and so long story, but yeah, it's been awesome.
No, it was fun because by the time my team, I always love getting my team to hear other people in the industry as well too. So that night, just having dinner and just them listening to your story, just personally on that level of almost rescuing this child with need, and what you're doing with the Smile Magic brand and what you're doing for the DSO community in general. I think everybody probably walked out of there and was like, Josh, that guy is super awesome. And I'm like, I know. So
that's kind.
Yeah.
Amazing teams behind me. I mean, not doing it by myself, right? Like, we have quite the team to be able to execute on all of this for sure.
Yeah. Well, so talk me through that a little bit, because I know you've definitely put some content out there about entrepreneurs leading through crisis, business owners leading through crisis. What are you telling this Monday, what are you telling your leadership team? How are you guys coming together?
Yeah. So, it's crazy, but Monday was like a different world. And so maybe I can walk you through, Monday, we're sitting in Texas, and I'd say we had the benefit, if you will, of seeing what was happening in other states to try to do some level of prediction, and I'll be honest, on Monday, I said, guys, I think if we use kind of Seattle, which at that point was kind of the leading indicator, if you will, we probably have 2 to 4 weeks for Texas. And I said, Texas tends to be a holdout on a lot of things. And so, maybe we'll get to 4 weeks, but we need to start preparing for what's our position going to be if this happens. And I'll tell you, it was like 1,000-point decision tree we were starting to build out. And we went ahead and started communicating to the team. One of the things that we saw from the DSO Secrets Facebook page, what was happening in DEO, and just overall feedback was the team piece was really hard to manage because you had different government bodies, associations, different states creating requirements. Yeah. And to be honest, what I told my team, we're being out-marketed here, right? We can't control the messaging fast enough because of how much is coming in 24. It really wasn't even a 24 hours news cycle anymore. It was just a minute-by-minute news cycle, and just trying to keep up with that. So the first thing we did is we propped up a private Facebook page for all employees and got that out there, just saying, hey, we're going to be really transparent about what's going on and how we're responding to it. And then someone told me that I was old, that I said that. And so they started an Instagram site. So we assigned a team member, to copy everything that me or someone else posted to Facebook over to Instagram. We have our own intranet site. It's just like a Google Pages intranet site that the IT team set up. And then we started putting together a text platform as well. And everything moved so quickly. In the beginning, beginning meaning Monday, we were pretty organized on some of the pieces. By Friday morning, I just got in front of the team, and I should back up. We started Zoom calls too every evening, and then it went, I think by Tuesday, it was it was morning and evening. Yeah. As, hey, we'll give you an update. So we're both doing Zoom calls as well as some form of Facebook updating, etc., just to try to keep people apprised. Okay, ADA just came out with this. Here's how we understand that. Here's how our clinical team is organizing this, etc. By Friday, Josh, let's see, Friday, the clinical team decided that because of all of the disparate level of information, and though Texas hadn't made, Texas TDA, Texas Dental Association, had said, listen, this is up to the clinicians completely.
Okay.
We went down to the clinician level and said, clinicians, you decide whether we're at business as usual, you want to go to the defined ADA's emergency care model, even though the government hasn't decided, you want to go to an essential care model. So it's essential care, then emergency, or do you just want to shut down your office completely?
Okay.
And, you know, for the most part, we have practices that are serving either high-risk pediatric or underserved models with, you know, various needs there. So we just felt like with how much information, we're just going to tell the clinicians, we're going to drop back all the way back, and we're just going to support whatever you all come up with. 52 clinicians, whatever model you come up with, we'll change and adjust our staffing to meet that model.
Okay. Okay.
So
you put a lot of autonomy into those practices at the local level.
Yeah, we really treated, and this was up to the clinical owners of those practices, said we're actually going to make the associates basically the clinical owners. I mean, doctors on a day-to-day basis have autonomy. This was a new level of autonomy of like, you can decide whether your practice is open or not.
Yeah.
Like, that's not typical for dental owners to tell the associate they can decide those things.
Yeah.
But under these circumstances, we thought it was really appropriate. The team started meeting with every clinician, determining what their hours were going to be, what procedures they wanted support on, so that we could get staffing all matched up. And then we finally started getting everything nailed down by Sunday afternoon. And by Sunday, I think it was at 3:00, Governor Abbott came out and said, hey, we want to go to emergency care only in the state of Texas. I should back up. He said medically necessary care.
Yeah.
Right. So, and he's covering all like healthcare. And so we had already, had doctors closing practices. With COVID-19, we're trying to be sensitive to all of those things too. Like, some people just completely want to be at home, even if you think they should take on emergency care, they just emotionally can't do it, right? For various reasons, it's fine. But with that, then, back to the clinical team saying, hey, now the governor's come out, like, that's law. That's not associations anymore. That's law.
Yeah.
How do you guys want to interpret that law? We're just here to support.
Yeah.
So Monday morning was getting on with the team. Well, Sunday night was posting, here's the new law. We plan on downsizing dramatically to meet all of these requirements. Monday was closing all the practices for the day in order to just assess the myriad of information and decide what our clinical role is in all of this, and start to organize team members accordingly. So it's been the craziest, 10 years and 5 days, 7 days that I've ever had. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we're all in that same boat, like looking back, like, been through, the recession of, 2008, 9/11, all that kind of stuff. Nothing's been quite like this. And I think it's just the whole nature of, we've never faced a public health threat before and what that does. Everything else has been kind of isolated, like events, or, the recession affected a lot of the financial and auto and banking industry. But, everybody's talking about communication right now as being just one of the keys. How have you guys zoned in on that? What are you doing? What changed in your communication tactic through this time? What's that structure look like?
Well, we've always felt really good about our culture. We have our 9 pillars. We have activities we actually do in morning huddles. It's called Pillar in a Box. So from a culture perspective and being a team, and there's lots of great practices and companies out there that have that kind of stuff. Those things were still intact, but communication, we didn't have a team private Facebook site for all the reasons you wouldn't on an organization this size. It would be too hard from HR and who should be in it, who should be out, and how do you administer that? So we had to just kind of break down all of those rules and just say, the most important thing is to be transparent with our team.
Yeah.
So I think as a leader, some of the decision trees we had to work through was, where do we be transparent and where do we be confident and clear? And I think in a situation like this, those are tough. I mean, you don't want to get on with your team and just start bawling like, I don't know what to do. We're all going to die. That's transparent maybe, and that's probably how we feel on the inside, but that's probably not the leadership. At the same time, I felt in no position to get on and say, I know exactly how this is going to play out, and here's what we're going to do every day, because it was moving so fast. So I think, you asked what changed. We were probably a little more messy in our communication to lean towards transparency versus kind of having our project management team have everything organized, roll out the trainings, et cetera, which is usually how you like to do some change management.
Yeah. No, one of my kind of favorite leadership authors, John Maxwell, was always known for saying that the leader's number one job is to define reality. And I've been reminded of that the last couple of weeks of, I think mindset is so important. And I've done nothing but just kind of been like, hey guys, mindset, like get yourself right first through this time. But really being able to just as a business leader define what that looks like and not just go, hey, we'll get over this, that glossy kind of optimism, but just even with our teams, as well. And, last Monday I got my team together and just said, hey, lots of people are losing their jobs. Lots of our friends are closing their businesses. I don't know how this is going to affect us, but we're going to do our best. Like I'm going to try my hardest, so know that. And we will take this a day, a week at a time. We'll communicate. So it's been challenging for sure.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So
yeah.
And I think our team, humans are so smart. Like they just want to hear that, right? Like as messy as some of it, the communication was, and frankly, open-ended like yours and uncertain, man, the team's response has been nothing but awesome, of thank you for being open. Thanks for being transparent. And we're here to help.
Yeah. Are you seeing the result of that? Are you seeing team members step up into just kind of a new capacity and just helping to share that load?
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Like way beyond what I expected. We have individuals that we've laid off and have asked, can I just volunteer to work here? So we actually, from an HR perspective, we didn't expect that. And so had to create some kind of internship program to meet, what would be the right HR guidelines for someone to be able to help to the extent that they've been laid off, especially at like support center roles and so forth. So we've had IT people, legal, every position where we absolutely had to downsize. And they're still, asking, how can I help? How can I help? We've got team members who are posting various strategies for, just helping one another. If you're out of this supply, here's an idea. Here's what I'm doing, et cetera. Here's how I can help. Different government assistance, charitable assistance things, and these are very local level type things. Some of them apply, but I think that's been like the most humbling and awesome thing to see.
Yeah.
And all the executive team and others stepped in and just said, hey, we're not taking salaries, like whatever can be fed down to somebody else. Like we're interested and open to that. So.
Yeah. Gosh, that's amazing. I know your generosity, your strength of character, your resilience in a time like this are all attributes that you possessed even before this happened that are coming out now. But I also know the other side of that is that's probably not always the case underneath everything. And so how are you keeping yourself, like protecting your mindset, keeping yourself strong through this?
Yeah, I think they're basic principles, but they are good to remember. Like the self-care component becomes really important, which is super hard to do right now. But going back to principles of like, okay, how much news consumption should I have? And I'm usually really good at that. In fact, I just wait for other people to tell me what war is going on and what catastrophe is going on. Like if it's not in my real local center of influence, like I'm like, oh, that's good to know, you know. And people all the time like, you don't know about Brazil and what happened? I'm like, I don't. I'm okay with. I only got so many brain cells, really.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but with this, it's been interesting because as a leader, there's been an obligation for me to keep up with what's happening because it's moving so fast. I can't rely on that. So, you know, figuring out how to offset some of that has been a lot more of a challenge than I think usual. Being able to like support a team or reach out to other communities, try to get information and give it to somebody else has been super helpful to me emotionally, because I think what crises do mentally is just the natural part of us is they make us very inward. And because we're reflecting on all the losses that we anticipate we'll have or that we are having. Yeah. And so, you know, you kind of get in your head trying to solve the math problems really quickly. Yeah. And then it also causes paralysis for us to say, okay, I gotta protect all my assets. I gotta protect myself. So there's a little bit of a fight that I'm trying to do, which is, okay, Emmett, you want to go inward and self-analyze. How do you go outward and give back, right? Like go against the grain, be entrepreneurial, even in a situation like this. You want to contract and protect assets, get innovative. Where's the world going to be? Where do you need to be? Is this going to be something that damns you if it lasts for, you know, whether it's 30 days or 6 months, depending on where you're at on that spectrum? Is it something where you're back or even farther back than you were when it started? Or is it a wormhole which you used it to innovate where the world is going? And, you know, as I watch the amount of regulation, and this happens in every crisis, it cleans out a bunch of junk, right? So the regulation that's getting torn down immediately, I mean, for those who are like ground level, teledentistry, right? Like if you were a big teledentistry fan, COVID-19 is accelerating conversation around that, right? And that's not going to go away. Like once this is over, quote unquote, everyone's going to say, here's how that regulation destroyed our ability to serve patients, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be used in so many different industries to rip down barriers and archaic kind of structures that need to be ripped down. So if you're kind of stuck in the past, it's going to get even a lot more painful because things are going to accelerate. They always do after this is over. Digital is going to become way more important. It was already important, but now people are just going to say, okay, how can we do this online? How can we do this online? Right? So things like that. And to me, that's really exciting. Like I'd rather be there than solving some of these crises. So figuring out how to have a little bit of moments of innovating for the future is really helpful to me.
Yeah. You know, I love it. I don't think I realized that until you said it and put my finger on it. But so much of my advice, just even with our clients and with our team, is just staying engaged. Because I think, and helping, I think what you're saying is like when you help other people, you turn your attention to that, you stay engaged, you stay like that helps your mindset. And I think that's been some of my advice, even though our practices that are just like shutting down, reacting. I'm kind of like, hey, man, be there for your community, reach out, turn your attention this time. You're a trusted healthcare professional in your community. Be that right now. Be a source for news, be a source for safety, be a source for all, you know, supporting local business, all these things. When you say this is going, you know, like, is going to, man, I forget how you said it. It's going to burn out some things. It's going to get rid of
down a bunch of structures, right? Because capitalism is built both on the bull and the bear market.
Yeah.
And I think we think of capitalism built on the bull, right? On everything going up, like, oh, isn't that awesome, capitalism? this is the awesome part about now pandemics aren't, but market downturns are also the awesome parts about capitalism too, because other structures tend to try to save the past.
Yeah.
And capitalism has a little Darwinism, is saying, hey, if the past doesn't serve us anymore, now is the time to eliminate it. Whether it's personally like structures, I know everyone's like rethinking like, what's really important? What do I need to be doing, right? Like that's awesome stuff that's going to make us even more lean and mean personally, professionally, as an industry, as a country, going into the next wave here.
No, I love that. And I'm going to kind of shout out here to Facebook too, because I'm watching the feed here, and anybody who's live on that's watching it right now, if you've got questions, put them up there and I'll shoot them to Emmett as we're going. But it's so interesting because literally 2 weeks ago, well, actually like 12 days ago when we were having dinner, we had this kind of conversation, and you referred to it at the time. You said the market is frothy. And you're like, it's all fun and exciting, but there's a lot of us, and maybe meaning you specifically, maybe not, but like there's a lot of people watching for that downturn because they know the opportunity that's going to come with that.
Yeah. And it's, again, I don't want to take away from the pain of it, but you have to mentally kind of get past the now.
Yeah.
As a leader, your job is to get past the now and say, okay, so how does the story end? Right? I feel like that's a piece of leadership is how's the story going to end? Because I've got my tribe, my roles and responsibilities, and I need to prepare for that.
Yeah.
If I can go back a little bit, Josh, you said something that I really love, and I shared with the team early on and on Friday and Monday, is everyone individually needs to decide what their role is going to be. And you and I kind of talked about like the judgmental perspective just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for you either. And I think that's both dentist to dentist need to kind of back off from all of that. But on an individual basis, like we told our staff, some of you have children at home who really need you more than what the dental practice needs you right now. Right? Yep. They're scared. They're seeing what's going on, they were glad to get out of school, but like that passed after 24 hours. And they're uncertain how to interpret all of this. I've got 6 kids. I watch how they interpret things. Some of you have parents who are nervous, right? They fit in that 50, 60 plus. Grandparents, like there's a role to play there. Some of you have, church or other community connections. There's a role to play there. Yeah. And absolutely, I think there's a role for clinicians and staff to play, in these dental practices. So anyway, there's just so many different roles. Like this is a time to step back and say, okay, what am I going to do in this fight? Where am I going to help and I contribute? And I think spending your time and energy there versus this, feeling like and here's how I perceived it. Some people feel like they're the 3-year-old who got locked in the corner in timeout.
Yeah.
And they're just pointing and mad about everybody else who's like happy and running around. And I'd say you're in the corner in timeout in your own mind, right? Like there's something for you to do in your corner. Take that on. And this still isn't fun, but it gets a lot more exciting on, okay, I can contribute at this time in these ways. So anyway, just my perspective. It's one perspective.
No, I love that. I think it's coming back to an abundance mindset during this. And I was kind of saying last week, I was like, look, when the herd runs one way, it's always wise to turn and look the other way. And that whole concept of like when others, like, what do you see when others are panicking? And whether that's kind of broad opportunity or whether that's like your specific role during this time, I think it's all that, right? It's micro, like in the day to day, like what do you need to do today? It's macro and like, what's my role here in this? I think is super, an important place to just own and be responsible for that. One of the questions that came up here, which I love, and I kind of want to twist it a little bit, said, what are some of the problems being brought to our attention during this time that can provide entrepreneurship opportunities in the future. And I would love to spin that even towards the group practice space. Like, what are some of the problems in the group practice space that you've seen in the past that can provide opportunities on the back end of this?
Okay. Let me start bigger, and then maybe you can bring me in a little bit. So some things I think we need to prepare for specifically in dentistry is we know from the HIV/AIDS epidemic that the whole PPE concept changed, right? Like, it's hard for us to remember, but dentists used to not regularly use gloves. In fact, they said that it kind of messed up their ability to do dentistry because they couldn't tactically feel things as well. Well, you couldn't imagine that now, right? No. So we have to prepare that the PPE component, I don't know ultimately where that lands, but you got to start thinking, okay, well, what's that going to look like? It's a minor thing, but something just to put on the list and start thinking about. The technology piece, I think, becomes more critical. I mean, if you didn't have online scheduling, if you didn't have a great social media presence, and I can tell you there was places we were strong, places we were really weak. So if we wanted to bring this to group practice or individual practice, like, everybody's thinking to themselves, I wish there was a way that I was better connected with my patients on a regular basis. And the industry's come a long way. You know, I mean, we've gone from sending out a postcard every 6 months, which in an environment like this would not work, to, you know, doing text messaging, having Facebook sites, you know, all of these different components. But I can tell you that all of us are feeling the urgency to make that better, whether you have the bandwidth today, but the amount that's going to go digital, the amount of connection with the patient for them to be able to get information from you quickly, and them knowing where to get that information. I think we're all going to feel the weight of that. We already do, but we're going to feel it even more just going forward. You know? So groups like... I don't want to
interrupt you. I mean, keep your line of thought, but like, what's crazy this last week is how many practices reaching out going, how do I send an email to patients? Because they're trying to find a way to communicate to everybody, because social media doesn't do that. It just hits those people there, and yet phone call is inefficient. And they're like, how do we do this? And I'm like, man, this is 2020. Like, what are we talking about? You don't have an email system, but that's like the state of so many practices right now.
Well, yeah, and the practice management software is so archaic in general, speaking in general. It was built around, you know, I want to be able to do charting well, I need to schedule patients, and I need to get bills out. It's really not set up to be a CRM, a customer relationship management platform. And so I think that is going to, you know, there's already software companies kind of moving that way. But man, that's going to just be, people are going to get a lot more educated on why that was important and why you needed a platform. And I'd say there are some DSO structures, group practices that had CRM type processes in place and software, but now everybody's going to reassess that. I think, you know, getting somebody's email or getting their, and I honestly think, Josh, we're moving from email to just cell phone. Like, everybody just needs texting at this point. So if you're trying to catch up on email, you probably need to catch up on cell phones, and texting platforms are just going to get more and more important to be able to communicate, and two-way texting, right? So, you know, we've been feeling that pressure, and literally, like, in the last 30 days have been moving on two-way texting, not because of this, but because of, you know, where we saw the industry and patient need going. I'd love to have had that fully built out a year ago and already have all those capabilities to just bam to the cell phones, then bam back, you know, to our teams, and just, you know, be able to filter and give them the latest information and everything like that. I think people are just going to expect that going forward. And if you don't have that, you know, we're not the only industry too. Like, sometimes what I see is people saying, okay, well, it's the DSOs against the small groups. And It's just not true. 65% of people aren't going to the dentist. If I told you that 65% of people didn't have a cell phone, would you say that the problem is competition or the lack of marketing and reaching the customer?
Yeah, that's great.
So we've just got so much that needs to improve there as an industry, and I think this will put an emphasis on it. And again, what Anissa Holmes is doing, what DEO is doing, what ADSO is doing, like I think they're all moving in that direction, trying to help their teams.
You made a comment yesterday on my live when I was chatting with Josie about groups are growing fast right now, but lack the capital. Is that a comment on the economy and what was happening? Is that a comment currently? And what do you see with that state? Because I would imagine this is an amazing opportunity for groups if you got cash.
Yeah, I'll tell you, groups aren't thinking that way. Okay. You know, they're not looking at opportunity. Like no one wants to pull something on the team just because the other team members were desperate at the time. Like that just wouldn't be a good filtering process. Having said that, like there's somebody out there that will try to do that. I wouldn't want to be, you know, when the story all ends, hey, look at all these people I bought at desperate times and now hate us, you know?
Yeah.
But the reality is when you have groups, when you have PE, I've heard people say things like, well, they've got tons of money, etc. You have to understand that any money that a group has is going into either developing out the team immediately, going into developing out the team, building technology or other platforms for internal communication or patient communication, or to open up other practices to reach patient need, right? Like that, you're not sitting on a bunch of cash, you're investing nonstop. And I think that's the general theme. And so the problem with that is that when something like this happens, your capital is limited because if you had any, you were developing out some kind of system, process, you know, employee benefits, whatever it might be. And so you're not sitting on cash, taking it home. You're growing constantly. So
yeah, I get it. Like the investment opportunity was so good that any extra capital cash was better to just invest that back because the returns were so good that you're just not sitting on all these reserves right now to fund a downtime like this.
Well, yes. So returns are great, makes sense. Infrastructure is so intense too. So as you add locations, and this is why we started NDP, National Dental Partners, is every dentist who wants to add locations here's the story I typically hear, and is, hey, I'm gonna, get 5-10 locations, and then like life's gonna be awesome, and I'll sit at home and collect checks. The problem is all the humans that are involved with that, right? So think about how many employees that is, how many patients that is, and let's be honest, humans can be awesome and they can be crazy, and you're going to be leading that. So as you add locations, and I typically see after like the third location, you feel this intense need for more platforms. So you're either hiring leadership to help with that, and your systems and your standardization. Like you can't have a bunch of bad actors or your group just falls apart, right? Yeah. So leadership gets expensive. These aren't $10 or $12 hour employees. These are more expensive than that. Emotional intelligence has to be high. They have to have certain capabilities. So you're either throwing money into that, or you're having to build technology that doesn't currently exist. Or you're going out to different vendors and trying to buy that technology so that you can know what's going on. So let's say I'm just an individual dentist with 5 locations. Like there's a lot of my money that's just going back into everything that team needs, and me just trying to get clarity on what the heck's going on a daily basis.
What do you, those groups that are in that like 5, 6, 8 location model right now, I mean, my hunch is, and I've talked with a couple of them, but my hunch is all around the country that those are probably tough ones right now to navigate this, just because of being leveraged, maybe not having the leadership team developed out as much as possible, probably, multiple bank loans and things like that. What do you tell those guys during this time to come out on the other end?
Well, I think to your point, like, this is pressure testing all of us, where if we've spread ourselves thin and didn't invest in those things and said, hey, I'll just kind of pull it together myself. A lot of those guys already were kind of like, man, this is tough.
Yeah.
This just, more than the straw that broke the camel's back. To not have a CFO during this time, to not have an HR director during this time, to not be part of some kind of group like that would be the biggest thing. And I'm happy to promote other groups, but for that size, like DEO, Dentist Entrepreneur Organization, like that's the group of people I'd want to be on mastermind calls with them, because what I've noticed is they're sharing vendor information and different resources and like regularly, so they've really become, their executive team is other people with 5 location groups, etc. And along those lines, let me say that in a downturn situation, that's the one thing I'd be cutting a ton of costs, by the way, because you need to reserve your capital. That's one thing I would be investing in, is what group do I want to be around? Because if you're just like sitting at home, watching social media, you're not going to be able to get the brain power you need to accelerate into the future. Like, you need to be part of a group. When in 2008, I was in Las Vegas during that time, several homes, I had a house go from 250,000 to 50,000 in value, 25% unemployment. I was still part of a coaching group, right? Because I came out of that so much faster because of that. So that's just one thing I put out there, is like, all of us are probably reassessing our teams right now, and either really thankful or really wishful that we had, either built one or gotten into some kind of group.
Yeah, I love that. Super practical advice. I really got one more question, man. I'm going to wrap it up and kind of figure out where people can connect with you. But what effect, if any, do you see this having on the startup space, like startups that are intending to open in the next 3 to 6 months?
So, not overly concerned about startups. I think that the good news about any of this is it's actually not a financial downturn. It's a financial downturn caused by a pandemic.
Yeah.
So what you're really going to have is you're going to have built up demand from a macroeconomic perspective. And as soon as people have dollars online, they're going to want to spend them, because we're good Americans, right? So I wouldn't be as concerned about, if I was like just coming out of school, or maybe I had built up some capital and I was going to open up a practice. If I already had a game plan around that, I already done my assessment, I already knew where I wanted to go, all of that, I think it's actually really favorable. It's going to be very favorable. Landlords are going to be as open as any on, letting people in, and they're going to have plenty that are going out. Where I'm more concerned, individual dentists as well as groups that are right now too focused on how their production has fallen off, their AR is going down, and they're taking care of their team, they're paying expenses, etc. They don't have any clue about how much money it's going to cost to ramp back up. Everyone's so excited to get back online, but having been through downturns in other businesses and this one before, the most expensive part is ramping back up, especially for a people-centric business. So if you're doing any financial calculation, think about this. You're not going to have typically a single doctor with a staff member come in like you would on a de novo startup, let's say, for a single doc, right? You're going to have a bunch of recare patients that have gotten delayed, that want to come in. You're going to have a bunch of new patients, hopefully, right, that want to come in. So you're going to bring the staff in, you're going to get your support, you're going to, and you're going to have a bunch of employees that are like, hey, I'm ready to come back online, right? Well, now let's just do a little bit of counting here, and I'll just end with this so you're going to do some production. That production is going to go into AR, waiting to be collected, right? You might have patient portions and stuff, but your payroll is going to be hitting every 2 weeks, and people are not going to be thrilled about like, hey, listen, I don't have any money for you.
Yeah.
So you've got to be thinking about capital. So based on your question, Josh, like that's where I'm more concerned. And I've been trying to push that out through DEO and DSO secrets.
Yeah.
Is guys, be thinking beyond today. As painful as today is, your team needs you to be ready to get going as soon as this lifts. And frankly, Josh, we're going to go into a recession. You know, one thing that no one's talking about is oil prices. You know, everybody's thrilled at the pump, but I'm in Texas, like the layoffs that are happening around oil. And as soon as this lifts, we're going to see real economic issues that have been laying underneath this. And so we need to be, as leaders, ready to bring our team out of that recession, back online. And, you know, the blessing of being in dental is people are still going to have teeth, still have a need.
Yeah.
And we need to get back into that. So that would be my only talk on that.
I think that's really, really good advice, and probably not something I had enough foresight to kind of see there, but I think that that's smart. And especially for, you know, a lot of, especially single doctor owners probably have a line of credit for their business. The problem is, like, if you're using that to get through this time, then when you need to ramp up, it's going to be real tough. And so with some of that, we've been even looking at going like, we need to create a sustainable model here through this, because there will be that capital intensive period, and we got to be prepared for it. So
it's great.
That's super practical. I love that. Well, man, look, I appreciate you taking the time to be on here today. This was awesome. If people want to reach out to you, where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, so obviously I mentioned DEO, so you can check out that organization, Dentist Entrepreneur Organization. If they want to jump on Facebook, DSO Secrets, join that Facebook site. I don't have an Instagram for DSO Secrets. I need to get that platform in place. I'm learning that. And the podcast DSO Secrets, you know, of course, they can get any information off of that. But if they have individual questions and they want to post them there, I love when people post questions, because then everybody gets to consume from that.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're interpreting some of the laws there. I've had attorneys on, I've had accountants on, because there's all these new bills coming out, right? And people are trying to figure out which ones I should take advantage of, which ones I shouldn't, what's the risk, how does the cash flow work on different ones. I'm trying to push as much information as quickly as possible. We should have the CARE Act come out, you know, approved today. We'll see. And we'll try to get that interpreted and for everybody as well. So hopefully we can be your team. If you don't have one right now, we can give you some of that executive information. So. Yeah,
I love what you guys are putting out. I've been following it all the last 9-10 days as well. So I appreciate you making that a priority to help others. It's been helpful to me. So lots of great comments on Facebook. So yeah, you'll have to jump over and check those out and reply to them if you want to. But Emmett, thanks again. I really appreciate this. And man, I'm looking forward to getting to know you better and this being a good relationship long term. So
yeah, thanks for having me on, Josh.